I have another creepy story about Epping Forest. This guy starts working at a burger van. He works there for one entire summer, but he ends up quitting because he has this awful experience. So basically one day he's there alone, and just as he's about to shut up and go home for the day, he notices that there is a girl sitting with her back to him, just staring into the forest. This girl is fully in a white dress and she has blonde hair. After a while, he starts to worry that maybe this girl is a little bit too young to be there by herself. The burger van is quite some distance from the main road and he can't see any parents around. So he starts to wonder if maybe he should go over to her and approach her and just make sure she's okay before he leaves, because at this point it's getting dark. But as he gets closer, he realises this girl isn't moving at all. She is sitting so still. He's never seen a child sit this still in his entire life. And as he reaches her, he is absolutely bewildered and he screams, which startles this little girl, who jumps up and runs. The reason he screamed is because as he got closer to her, he realised that that wasn't the back of her head. It wasn't her hair. It was her face. She didn't have eyes or a mouth or a nose. She was just skin all over her face. The whole time he had been cleaning the food truck, the little girl was in fact facing him. Her body was facing him. Still to this day cannot explain it. It haunts him and he had to quit his job. He had to leave and find a new job. Absolutely not.
Imagine finding out your friendly London bus driver is actually a criminal mastermind with a £1 billion empire. That's a crazy case featured in Discovery Plus's new documentary, The Bus Driver, Britain's King. It's the 1990s and cartels absolutely ruled the streets of Colombia. Locals watched on in horror as violence, kidnappings and killings happened daily. Thousands of miles away in the city of London, Jesus Reyes Henao appeared to have settled into quiet suburban life. He appeared to be this quiet, polite family man who was just taking on a bus driving job to make ends meet. But behind closed doors, he was following in the footsteps of Pablo Escobar. He was connected with some of the most powerful and dangerous players in the cartel world. Just imagine getting on a bus in London having no idea that your bus driver is actually rubbing shoulders with the cartel. He absolutely ran the streets of London, building this £1 billion empire. This story has absolutely everything: bombings, assassinations, kidnappings, even the shooting down of a passenger jet. With access to Jesus himself inside Colombia's notorious La Picota prison, and now just how he managed to mastermind drug shipments and evade capture for so long. How did he do it? How did he manage to hide in plain sight? And after 5 years, how did they actually manage to take him down? This documentary really is full of twists and never before seen footage. Stream The Bus Driver, Britain's King on Discovery Plus now.
Don't move. Here comes La Llorona. I wouldn't have moved because I would have been dead. What the fuck? This guy claims that he has seen La Llorona twice in his lifetime. So he says that there was this one time where they were going to the river because they were going to fish. He says that they usually go around 10 or 11 at nighttime to fish. What they do is they set traps and they don't like leaving because they want to make sure that their traps work. So typically when they set the traps, they like to lay around the edge and maybe fall asleep or take naps or just wait around. He said it was in that moment where they were all sitting around and they were getting sleepy, so they were about to lay down and go to sleep. But it was also in that moment when they started to hear a cry from afar. He said that he just heard what sounded like a woman crying out, but it just sounded really, really far away from where they were. That's when one of the guys he was with tells everybody, do not move because here comes La Llorona. What do you mean do not move? He says that they were all laying there like together and they only had one blanket, so they were all like pulling at the end of blankets so that they can cover their heads and their bodies, and they're basically fighting to get hidden under that blanket. And again, the guy was like, stop moving, like don't make any sound, here comes La Llorona. And that's when everybody just got very still. He says that they were all fighting to cover their feet, like if the blanket was gonna protect. Actually, the blanket will protect, okay? In my head it will. So again, they're laying right next to the river where they had set the traps, and he says that it was then when they started to hear those cries very close to where they were. He said that they were in kind of an incline, so they were laying down, but they were able to, like, if they wanted to see, they could. He says that he peeked, and what he saw, like, moving through the river almost looked like a cloud, like something floating. It looked like a cloud to him over the river. He said that they all waited silently for them to, like, not even hear her from afar, from close by, and ever again. I would have died on the spot. Like, what the hell do you mean don't move? Here comes La Llorona. I would have been dead.
I have another creepy story for you. So this woman and her young son move into a new house, and the house itself is lovely. They're both really happy there, but the mum starts to feel like sometimes out of the corner of her eye she would catch somebody running up the stairs, she would catch some movement, but whatever it was she would see or thought she would see would suddenly be gone. And so she pushes it to the back of her mind until one night the mum is staying up late like she normally would doing chores, and all of a sudden she hears her son talking to someone. She opens the door, she sees her son chatting to something that's under his bed. So straight away she's like, what the hell are you talking to under your bed? And he's like, oh, nothing. She tells him it's time to go to sleep now. She closes the door and she says goodnight, but a few nights later she hears exactly the same again. She hears her son talking to somebody, and she goes into the room and she asks him who he's talking to, but this time rather than say no one, her son looks visibly upset, and then he tells her that he can't tell her who he's talking to. Whoever this little boy was talking to did not want him telling his mum who he was. And this actually carries on so much that eventually the mum has to take her son to a child psychologist. Crying and the screaming and the talking in the middle of the night, it continues until eventually one night the mum's in her room, she's fast asleep, and she's awoken by this awful screaming, like blood curdling scream. She goes running into her son's bedroom, and that is where she finds her son being dragged off of his bed, and he's screaming, let me go, let me go. She runs over, she grabs him with both her arms, and she has to forcibly pull her son up from whatever is under the bed, dragging him under. So she takes her son into her room, and that is where they both fall asleep until she hears a man's voice from under her bed telling her, come under here, come under here. So she is terrified. She's like, who are you? What are you? Who are you? She looks under the bed. There's nothing there. But she continues to hear this man's voice. In the morning, they pack their bags and they leave. And they stay in contact with the neighbours, who eventually tell them that after they move out, several families moved into that house, but not one of them stayed. And that is a true story. Happened in America. I've heard the story of the woman that was hiding inside the bed. I wouldn't have put it past somebody to just be like frogging it up inside a mattress. It's possible.
Spooky story time about my husband's sleep paralysis. My husband has been suffering from sleep paralysis for years now. And it's gotten so bad to the point where I wake him up, he falls asleep, but it's like if it just starts right where he left off, if that makes sense. One of the scariest ones that he told me was he was asleep and he was facing the wall. Well, right here at the corner, he says that he opened his eyes and he saw a black shadow standing right here at this corner. And at first he was like, okay, am I having a sleep paralysis? Am I asleep? Am I awake? Like, what's going on? So it was just kind of like hunched like this. And then he says that it slowly started turning, like, but like the whole black cloak was like. So in that moment, he like starts moving, shaking, like, and he wakes me up, so then I wake him up. And he has learned that when I wake him up, he has to get up out of bed and like go downstairs, have some water, like wake up and then come back to bed to fall back to sleep. Because like I said, if he immediately just goes back to sleep, he starts right where he left off. And he tells me that every time that he has these sleep paralysis things, it literally feels like it's 100% real. What's scary is that I have read and I have heard and I have seen that sleep paralysis is the beginning stage of astral projection. If you guys have seen the movie Insidious, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I low-key don't want him to dig deep into that because that's scary. Insidious traumatized me. But if you guys know any information about sleep paralysis, I know that there's a medical term and all of that. Honestly, I don't believe any of that. I think if you're having sleep paralysis, it's for a reason, personally. So if you guys know anything about this topic, please let me know. And if you have any sleep paralysis stories that you'd like to share, please send them via DM or email, and I'd love to read them. And I will see you guys in the next spooky story. Bye!
So yesterday I went to a Botanica, right, to go and get some crystals because I was looking to try to find some carnelian. I walk into the store and I'm starting to feel dizzy, right? So I'm looking around, I see the witch's brooms up above the door frames and everything. I'm like, okay, I get what's going on here, but why am I feeling dizzy? You know, because I don't got no negative shit on me. I'm looking at this little shelf of crystals and everything, and I get really dizzy. Like, it starts feeling like I'm cross-eyed really hard, and I just kept going like this, like, whew, like, whoa, you know? Try to brush it off, keep going, mind you. When I walked in, I hadn't even said hi to the lady that was at the counter or whatever, 'cause she was working with somebody else. So I was just looking around for stuff that I was trying to get. Now, the feelings kept distracting me, okay? But I was like, okay, let me just try to pay attention to what I'm looking for, because it could just be the fact that it's a lot of different crystals around me. So just a lot of different energy. I walk around the counter, you know, I go to the other side, I'm looking at candles and stuff like that, and then I started feeling this pulling from my left ear towards the back. So I kept looking at the back, and I looked at the lady at the counter, and I was like, do you have a spirit in here? She was like, huh? I said, do you have a spirit in here? She was like, why? Are you picking up on anything? I said, yeah, it feels like, you know, it's something like back there in that side of the store. And she was like, oh, are you getting anything else about it? I was like, it doesn't feel negative or anything like that. It just feels like somebody's like standing right there. And she was like, oh, really? What else about it are you getting? And I was like, well, it doesn't seem like it can come past a certain point. Like you may have a protection up or something at like back there. So it doesn't seem like it can come past a certain point. And she was like, oh, wow, that's crazy, because, you know, you're actually not the first person to pick up on it. I had another lady 2 days ago come in, and she actually had to stand closer to the back of the store to feel it. But you might be more sensitive because you caught it from the front of the store. But she also told me that it was something back there. It seemed like it was a spirit back there. And she was like, are you getting anything else from it? I said, it feels female. It doesn't. And she was like, oh, wow, the other lady couldn't even pick on whether it was male or female. I said, yeah, it feels female. It doesn't feel like it's a threat to you at all. It just seems like it's a little confused about what you got going on in this space. And if you talk to her, I'm pretty sure she will work with you. And she was like, I'll definitely do that. I've been working on my mediumship and this, that, and the third. So I'm like, oh my God, she thinks I'm a medium. Then I had to think like, bitch, look at what you just did. And she was like, yeah, well, that actually makes sense, because, you know, right behind that curtain right there is actually where we keep all of our protection herbs. So it makes sense that it can't come past that certain point. I just walked in here to get a stone, ma'am. Am I a medium? This is far from the first experience that I've had like this. I pick up on spirits all the time around random people and make people cry and bring up people that I've never met before in my life, but that they've known, but it's, how do you feel?
What would you do if something grabbed your feet in the middle of the night? If you're new here, hi. I usually talk about some pretty scary stuff, and recently I opened an email where everyone who finds this page can send me their ghost stories. And let me tell you, these are genuinely terrifying, and that's why the light is on. And if you've seen any of my other videos, you know that I normally film these in the dark. But what y'all don't know is that I usually film them during the daytime, and it is currently nighttime, so that's a no-brainer to keep the lights on for me. And I think this story in particular highlights a very common thought that everyone has at night, especially when they're talking about things that are terrifying. So let's get into it. The story comes from someone who would like to remain anonymous, and for obvious reasons, I'm going to respect that. This person begins their email by telling me that when she was 5 years old, her and her family went to Turkey and they were staying in a hotel. She was sharing a bed with her mom and her dad, so she was in the middle, and her 3 other brothers were in separate rooms. And on the first night, she wakes up and looks over at the doorway and sees a full body white apparition standing there. And being 5 years old and not really understanding any of that stuff, she just thought it was her dad's shirt hanging up and maybe it was her eyes playing a trick on her. But when she woke up, the shirt wasn't there anymore. The following night, one of her brothers was begging to sleep with her parents. And as they got older, it was revealed that he had seen someone looking at him from the wardrobe in the room that he was staying in. And there was a hammer on the chair right next to his bed. And when he looked away and looked back, the hammer was gone. Mind you, he was staying by himself, so you get the fear. And on the very last night, her mom felt someone grabbing her feet and woke up to her daughter, the person who sent me this email, thrashing around at the end of the bed like something had dragged her down the bed. And the girl who sent me this email says that she does not remember that because she was so young and so scared. And maybe it's because I've experienced something in a hotel room. Maybe it's because my sister was verbalizing scary stuff like that when she was younger. I don't know. I don't know why anything with a child or a child verbalizing that they have seen or felt things freaks me out so much, but it does. And the common fear I was alluding to is something grabbing your feet in the middle of the night, because I have seen a couple videos of people talking about not wanting their feet out because then something could grab their feet. I have thought it, you have probably thought it too. I don't take risks, hence the light being on this time. But anyways, that's gonna do it for me. Stay tuned for my ghost stories.
The following happened in Saltillo, Coahuila. La Niña Fantasma. This lady says that every day she takes the fastest route that she can find in order to get to work. She says that she avoids the periférico because the traffic is horrible. So what she does is she drives by El Bosque Urbano. Now she says that she's driven there a couple of times and nothing like this had ever happened to her before. She was driving and she had music going and she was singing along, and that's when she was about to pass La Calle Bosque and that there was a playground on the side. In that moment, her car completely shut off because she drives standard and she didn't shift correctly. When she was about to turn her car back on to keep going is when she heard from the little playground that the swings were moving. It was still super early in the morning, so it was dark, so she had to really look at the playground to see if anybody was there. When she was finally able to concentrate, she said that she saw a girl on the swing and she noticed how that little girl was looking right back at her. She said that the moment where she finally was able to see the girl and see that the little girl was looking back at her, that little girl got up and started running away until she got lost in the darkness. She was really concerned because she was thinking, what is this little girl doing in the playground at this time and it's still really dark? She didn't even have time to think of anything because in that moment she heard a voice calling for help. She didn't think twice. She got out of her car, went to the back and got a flashlight. She said that she started pointing the flashlight towards where that little girl went. She didn't see anything, so she was just like looking around the area. She looked around and never saw anything, but that was also the moments where she saw a cop car getting close to her. I guess they saw the car on the road and police came out and said what she was doing there. He was asking if she was okay, if she needed help. She immediately tells them that her car shut off because she shifted wrong, but that when she was turning it on again, she saw a little girl. The girl ran far away and she was concerned because she heard someone screaming for help. The police officer and the partner that was on the passenger side seat actually came out and they also were putting their flashlight towards where that little girl went. She says that the cops actually called for backup too and that the backup came and they were all looking for this little girl. They checked the entire zone and they never found anybody. That's when she told them like, no, you guys need to check really good because I swear I saw a little girl there and then I heard someone screaming for help. She said eventually she just told them she had to leave because she still had to get to work on time, so she just left and didn't know what happened, if they found the girl or not. She did say that the police officer stayed there when she drove away. When she got to work, she told her coworkers everything that happened before she even got there, and that's when one of her coworkers told her that in that area there's a lot of people who have experienced paranormal things, that they see ghosts of people there. He explained to her that back in the day a lot of people died in that area where it used to be like a swimming spot or something like that, and that apparently the most famous story was that a little girl had drowned there. She said that after hearing that she felt so bad and like she just felt so bad for the little girl whose soul is still there, and she does continue to drive through there and every time she just keeps thinking about that girl and how awful it must have been drowning there.
Ouija boards are an absolute no in my book. Spooky story time. A follower named Aaliyah sent me this story and we're gonna call it Let's Play the Ouija Board. Aaliyah is in college and she says that on a random Saturday her and her friend were bored and her friend was like, hey, you want to play the Ouija board? She says that her family is very religious, so she knows better, but she does it anyway. They go into the study room and there's no one in there. They did not have an actual Ouija board, so they downloaded an app on her friend's phone. And it took a turn very quickly. They started asking typical questions like, is there anyone here? And the board said yes. And Aaliyah's friend asks, are you a good spirit? And immediately it said no. I would have been out that motherfucker immediately. They kind of paused and looked at each other like, and then she says that the board kind of started doing its own thing. It started moving and it spelled out, are you scared? Aaliyah was scared and she asked her friend and she's like, are you messing with me? And her friend is like, no, like they're both freaking out. They both look at each other and Aaliyah's like, you're never supposed to take your hand off the board. Nonetheless, they proceed and the board starts to spell Z-O. I'm not going to finish it because if you know, you know. And if you don't, look it up. Aaliyah says that she immediately knew exactly what it was trying to spell. So she's putting pressure on the planchette. That way it doesn't like continue to move. And they both immediately say goodbye to the board because they were done at this point. They were done playing. They both run to her friend Daniel's room and they explain what happened. And he's literally like, hell nah, I do not mess with that. Y'all need to leave. They didn't want to go back to their room, so they go to their friend Andrea's room, didn't mention anything, and they start watching TV. Out of nowhere, her door kind of opens, and then it kind of slowly, like, starts swinging back and forth. They go back to their friend Daniel's room, and they ended up spending the night there. The very next morning, she goes back to her own dorm and she realizes that her clothes is literally thrown everywhere, all over her room. She questions her roommate, and her roommate's like, honey, I was asleep, but I heard you messing around. I thought you were getting close to go out, whatever. And Aaliyah's like, I didn't come home last night. I stayed with Daniel. Aaliyah says that she was so scared after this and she literally drove home. She says that the college is only about 20 minutes from her home. So she went home. Thankfully, nothing else happened after that. But I am pretty sure this is the last time Aaliyah plays with that Ouija board. What do you guys think? I have mentioned it before. I am intrigued with Ouija boards. I love the art of it. I love it, but I will never play one because I believe in it 100%. I'm not playing with one. No, thank you. Thank you so much to Aaliyah for sending me this spooky story. If you guys have any other stories that you'd like for me to read, please send them via DM or email, and I'd love to read them, and I will see you guys in the next spooky story. Bye!
Let's talk about something scary. If you're new here, hi. I usually talk about some pretty scary stuff on here, and today I'm going to be talking about an experience that my best friend in high school had, and I'm going to be honest, I don't know how I forgot it. It's absolutely bone-chilling, and it really makes you think about how many places are actually haunted. So let's get into it. I had a friend in high school, we'll call him Jay, who was an active and avid ghost hunter. He believes in the paranormal, the afterlife, spirits, demons, stuff like that. And we really started being friends while I was going through the aftermath of playing with a Ouija board. So just for some context, 2 hours outside of my hometown, there is a road in the middle of nowhere called Seven Sisters Road. And it is allegedly very haunted. Legend has it that 7 women in the early 1900s were murdered on that road and their spirits never left. And as a result, people experience paranormal activity. People say that they see balls of light, apparitions, they have their radio go out, their car dies, they hear laughing and whispering and screaming. And just as a reminder, this is in the middle of nowhere and it is a gravel road with a forest, train tracks, and that's about it. And I guess my friend Jay got really curious one night and drove out there. And it is safe to say that I woke up from him blowing my phone up. And what I saw on my phone was absolutely horrifying. It was a vlog style video with one hand on the wheel, one hand on his phone, filming, talking to the camera about how he's about to park on Seven Sisters Road and how he's kind of skeptical because it's just a legend. He parks and immediately his radio goes out. And when that happens, you can visibly see that he was afraid. And he's like, there's no way. So he starts messing with the buttons because he's parked at this point. Radio comes back on and he's like, okay, it was just a fluke. As he says that, car dies. And I don't mean his car shuts off and his headlights are still on. I'm talking like car died, headlights are off. So now he's sitting in complete darkness in the middle of nowhere in the middle of the night. And it gets worse because he starts to hear gravel moving. And at this point, you can see the pure fear in his face. And he says that he can start to feel the car moving. Not forwards and backwards, but kind of rocking side to side. He sits there for a second. After it's done, he tries to start the car. Car starts. He turns the headlights on. He gets out and he starts looking at the car. At which point, you can see more fear in his face when he realizes that there are footprints on his car. And at this point, he turns his camera around and he's filming the footprints and he takes his finger and swipes it across the footprint to show that these are fresh. And if anyone doesn't know why he did that, when you drive on a gravel road, you have a layer of dust on your car. I've talked about this particular thing before. You have a layer of dust that sits on your car, and when you touch it, it leaves a mark. And by him taking his finger and going across the footprint, leaving the same mark on the hood of the car as the footprint did, showed that those footprints were fresh. Then he said something along the lines of like, absolutely not. Gets in his car, reverses, and gets the heck out of there. When he gets home, he realizes that the footprints weren't just on the hood of the car. They went all the way up his windshield, on top of his sunroof, and towards the back of the car, but they just stopped before they got to the trunk. I also forgot to mention that he did this on a school night. So when he got to school the next day, he showed me his car with the footprints on it. And with the sun hitting it, you could see clear as day footprints walking up his windshield. And in all honesty, that is a huge factor on why I have not visited that place. I'm too scared. But that's going to do it for me. Stay tuned for more ghost stories. I'm not gonna lie, you guys, after visiting the house again and seeing what I saw through that window and catching it on video, I needed a couple days to recoup after that bullshit. If you haven't seen the video, go watch it before watching this one. Otherwise, what I'm about to say makes no sense at all. Seeing that in the window, literally looking like it always looked when I would see the shadow, was genuinely disturbing. Okay, this MAC powder has seen its days, but I'm not a waster, okay? I don't waste. Also, they changed all of the shades. So now when I try to go get my match, it's like different. And then I've tried getting matched twice and they can't get it right. So I'm using her up as long as I can. But when I got there, I felt like someone was watching me when I took that video of the window. I didn't even notice it. One of you commented saying that you saw a shadow in the window, and I was like, wait, hold on a second. So I went back and I watched it and I saw it, and then I zoomed in even more. That's when I could see like what looked like a hand coming in between both of the glass parts of the window. So I know that wasn't human. I could clearly see like the outline. And I also noticed right above my old bedroom window, there was a camera, and not like a Ring camera. It was like a surveillance camera. It makes me wonder, you know, what's going on that they have to have a legitimate surveillance camera versus just like a basic Ring camera. Because if you were worried about people breaking in or wanting to keep an eye on your packages, you would just have a Ring camera like everybody else. But no, a surveillance camera? That's odd to me personally. Honestly, the fact that anyone has cared at all to hear what I have to say seriously means so much to me. I've literally never told the full story of what I went through until I did those TikTok videos. Friends and family knew bits and pieces, but they didn't know the extent. My sister called me the other day as I was on my way home from work, and we were talking about the videos, and she just was saying that she had no idea that it was like that for me. Given she wasn't living in the house anymore, but she didn't know that it was that bad. And I guess I just kind of kept it to myself when I was a teen because I already felt like so many people didn't believe me, and so what was going to make them believe me now? I didn't realize how much of a toll that had on me until I got older. And then revisiting all of that kind of put into perspective the feelings that I was going through as a teenager and how much that contributed to my depression. It sounds really corny, but I really feel like through this experience with you guys, I've healed so much of that. Like, I didn't even really realize how much of it I was still holding on to and how I just felt so hidden. And when you go through an experience that's so taboo to hear about and to talk about, it's a really isolating experience. And then when you connect with other people who've been through the same thing or who believe you, there's like a level of freedom to that, which I was not looking for or even expecting when I made that TikTok video. Loved hearing your guys' stories. Like, when you message me, when you comment, I know I don't respond to all of them just because there's a lot, but I promise I do read all of them. I don't know how I feel about the gel. I feel like it's a little much. I love this Benefit brow pencil because it makes hair strokes, and when you're filling in, it's just effortless. Look at that. Look how nice that looks. I discovered this brow pencil like 4 years ago, and I've literally not used anything else. I also forgot to tell you guys that I went to the mill. I took my girlfriend. She just went along for rides with me that day. I didn't catch anything on camera that I know of. Maybe you guys will spot something. I did not get out of the car. I was not about to get out of the car. And I didn't even want to get out of the car for my old house, but I had no other choice because I had to change spots with my girlfriend because I was way too dizzy and nauseous to drive. But I'll upload that video next.
Trigger warning, I have found the creepiest paranormal story on Reddit. It's literally giving me shivers. Don't watch this alone, don't watch this in the dark, and definitely do not watch this in bed alone at night. This happened way back in 2002. My mum was living in Pakistan with my father. My mum got pregnant, and around the birth of my brother, they started looking for houses to rent. And they find this really big, beautiful house to rent, and it was suspiciously very cheap. My parents went to go meet the landlord, which turned out to be a young woman, but there was a catch, and this is why the house was so cheap to rent. Her mum was still living at the house, but she had her own separate living quarters. So there was a master bedroom with a bathroom attached with a separate entrance, and that's where her mum was living, and where they were going to live, where they were renting the place, that was completely separate. So they would hypothetically never really cross paths while living in the same building. Just to quickly note, this master bedroom was on the ground floor, and there was this door in the lounge room that led into this master bedroom, but it was bolted shut, so nobody can access or use that door. The only way to access this master bedroom was through the separate entrance. My parents agreed to move in with this older woman who was living in the master bedroom on the ground floor, bolted away, but this older woman, let's just call her F, she was not happy. She did not want the house to be rented out to anybody else, as she lived in this house her whole life and she wanted the whole house to herself, but her daughter rented it out anyways. This woman F, she was very old. She was in her 70s. She was very short. She had a hunchback. She had long, black, deformed nails. Her hair was short and uneven and was dyed multiple different colours, but mostly grey. And she wore very heavy makeup, which probably wasn't very suitable for her age. In my mum's words, she looked like a witch, and she was terrified of her. She also seemed and acted like a witch, like someone who did witchcraft, and she had terrible hygiene. So my mum was working as a lecturer at the time, and she would come home in the evening around 5 p.m. So they hired a maid to live with them. This is very common in Pakistan at the time. During the day, this maid, let's call her B, she used to look after my brother in the lounge and in the house, and they used to like sing songs, listen to music. The old woman F, she used to sleep in the morning and be up all night. And during the morning or during the day, when she used to hear this music, she used to scream at B through the walls. But B, she was around 18, 20 years old. She was a young woman. She used to just take it lightly and just play with childish banter and just laugh at it at the time. B, the maid, she started to blast even more music and sing even more louder. This old woman F, she hated them. She wanted my mum and the maid out the house because she never wanted the house to be rented out in the first place. Maid and this old woman used to have so many arguments through the door and through the walls, but my mum never used to intervene because she was just terrified of this old woman. In the kitchen there was a window, and this window looked into the garage, so it was basically a window in the garage. Every time this old woman F left her room, she would be seen walking through the garage because the door was in the garage that led to her room, and there was a window in the kitchen, so you can see every time she left and she went back in her room. One very late evening, the maid was just finishing up some chores in the kitchen. It was around 2 a.m. and she's washing the dishes in the sink, and she just glances up at the window and she sees this woman. She sees F, this old woman, just staring at her, dead in the eyes. There was no lights on the garage, just staring at the maid doing the dishes. And she screamed and she jumped and she ran away because she was just so scared. This old woman F then started to stand near the window a lot more frequently and peer into the house, watching them. It got so bad they had to put curtains on the window so she can stop looking into the house. From day one, my mum had bad vibes in this house. She just always felt there was a negative energy. One evening she was in bed, she said bye to B, and my brother was in a cot a few feet from her bed. All of a sudden the room just went dark. The lights are still on, but it just felt dull. The room just went dark all of a sudden. Mum then sees a black figure, almost like a gust of black smoke, go into my baby brother's cot. Immediately ran to go check on my baby brother, and what she saw, his face had completely changed. His nails literally grew, he became dark, and his limbs were all twisted and all weird. He had his hands in a clawing motion, like he was trying to claw at my mum. She jumped back and automatically started to read surahs and verses from the Quran, which just rolled off her tongue. Baby brother then collapsed, and she felt a presence leave the room. And then all of a sudden, he got a really high fever and started to turn red and purple. She called a neighbour to take her to the hospital because she didn't have a car at the time. She ran outside in the pitch black, and this old woman F was standing there smirking and smiling at my mum. Old woman then asked my mum, is everything okay? My mum was so surprised that she knew something was wrong, but she just ignored her.
So I'm gonna tell you how this woman died, and then I want you to tell me if you think this was just an accident, because the police are saying it was, but I'm just not buying it. So in the early morning hours of November 19th, 2011, 20-year-old Jalea Davis was found dead laying in the middle of the road on Interstate 77 near Parkersburg, West Virginia. One of her legs was broken in half, bone exposed, her right breast was missing, and she had been decapitated. Her car was found parked a little ways down the road near mile marker 181. Still running, doors locked, and the right side passenger window smashed open. Police say that she must have hit the guardrail and then was somehow ejected out of this window, and then run over by her own car. But the damage to her car wasn't that bad, yet the trunk and inside was covered in blood. And the weirdest part, Jalea was naked from the waist up, and her bloodied coat and bra were neatly draped over the guardrail next to her body. Police say she died of just a tragic road accident, but so much evidence suggests that this was a major cover-up, and I'm personally not buying the accident theories, so let's talk about it. Jalea Davis was 20 years old when she suddenly and very mysteriously died in 2011. She left her home on the evening of November 18th at around 5 p.m. to go and hang out with some new friends that she recently made. Her friends were Kristen, Jordan, Freddie, and Katie, and she'd only known them for about 3 months. So after leaving that night, Jalea went to Kristen's house at around 7 p.m. and the two baked cookies and then got ready to go to a house party in Parkersburg, West Virginia. The two friends got to the house party at around 9 p.m. where they met up with Jordan and Freddie, who were already there. They all hung out for about 2 hours before they all piled into a car and went to pick up their fifth friend Katie at a nearby Hardee's. They made a quick stop at the store to buy some more alcohol, and then they all went back to the house party where they continued to drink and have fun. According to Kristen, Jalea was drinking a lot and had like 16 shots, but to others, Jalea didn't seem that drunk. A few hours into the party is when the night kind of starts to take a turn. It was reported that at some point, Katie's ex-boyfriend showed up and he and Jalea were flirting and dancing together, which angered Katie. At around 3 a.m., they all left the party, and it was around this time that some kind of altercation occurred that altered the rest of the night. The original plan was for Jalea to stay the night with Kristen, but at around 3:23 a.m., Jalea called her sister and asked her to come and pick her up at a gas station instead. Her sister could hear Kristen in the background, and then Jalea turned to her and said, quote, "Give me the keys," end quote. The call then ended, but just a few minutes later, Jalea called her sister back, and this time around she was audibly hysterical, like something really bad had happened. She was calling Kristen a bad friend and a bunch of really bad names, and now she wanted to be picked up at a different location, which was a rest stop near Williamstown. Jalea's sister asked her what happened and tried to calm her down, but all Jalea said was that she would tell her everything when they were together. But sadly, Jalea never got the chance to tell her, because within 15 minutes, she would be killed under extremely mysterious circumstances. Her sister tried driving out to the rest stop, but she couldn't find Jalea, and she even tried calling her a few times and got no response. So she called Kristen, the last known person to be with her, but she too said that she didn't know where Jalea went after they split up. During this period of 15 minutes, 3 911 calls would be placed, and this is when things start to get strange. So at 3:48 a.m., a truck driver called 911 to report a possible car accident. He found a car near mile marker 181 on Interstate 77, motionless but still running. The back end of it, though, was covered in blood. He got out of his car and walked a little bit further down the road and told the operator that he could see what he thought was a mangled deer in the middle of the road. He was hoping that that's what it was at least, but then he got closer, and what he saw was something straight out of a nightmare. Laying in the oncoming left-hand lane was Jalea's contorted body. Her leg was broken, snapped in half, and what's odd is that she was naked from the waist up. Her right breast was missing, and she'd been decapitated. This was obviously a really gruesome scene, but what police found once they arrived is mind-boggling. What's horrible to think about, though, is that Jalea's sister stumbled across the crime scene before police were able to get there, and she saw her sister's mangled body and head. Something immediately caught her attention, though, as well as the truck driver's, because right next to Jalea's body was her white, bloodied coat and her bra, neatly folded over the guardrail, which it doesn't take a genius to know, but if you've been decapitated, there's no way that you would have been able to proceed to take off your own clothes and drape them over the railing before dying. So then the Wood County County Sheriff's Department gets there, they notice that Julia's car was about 1/10 of a mile down the road from where her body was found. Like I said, it was still running with the headlights on, but all of the doors were locked, and the driver's side airbag was deployed. On top of this, the passenger side window was smashed open, and this car was completely bloodstained. There was blood all over the back of her car and in the trunk, as well as in the passenger wheel well, under the car, and in a broken headlight. To make things even stranger, there was a large bloody handprint on the inside of the driver's door handle and on the armrest. Police then found a second person's DNA on the shift plate. To me, this indicates that either someone was already injured inside the car before crashing, or someone else was at the crime scene before her body was discovered and went back inside Julia's car. This lines up with the way her clothes were found neatly draped over the railing, because how in the world would her clothes have fallen off from a car wreck like that? They just wouldn't. But for how badly Julia was injured, you'd think that the damage to her car would be pretty significant, right? Well, it wasn't. In fact, it didn't really look that damaged given the circumstances. The crime scene itself was enough to raise major red flags though, because first you have her clothes being tampered with, but then police found acceleration marks leading away from a pool of blood and Julia's body. This suggests that at the very least, someone else was at the scene before the 911 call was placed. So police investigated, but it didn't take them long to rule Julia's death as an accident, even with the second DNA found in the car. According to authorities, they believe that Julia was driving her own car drunk and struck the guardrail. They assume that she wasn't wearing a seatbelt and somehow got ejected from the car out of the passenger side window, and then she was run over by her own car. After being hit by her own car, police say that her body then somehow rolled into the oncoming lane and was then struck again by a tractor trailer. Officially, the case is closed, stating that Julia died of a tragic road accident, and the alcohol was a contributing factor. They backed this up with the toxicology report that showed her blood alcohol level as 0.19, which is over twice the legal limit. They say no foul play was involved, yet some things still don't really add up, such as her friends' statements, the ones that were with her right before she died. They all seem to reportedly change a few times, and when Kristen was interviewed the first time, she voluntarily told the police how she thinks Julia died, which didn't add up at all and is just a really weird thing to say. And even though this doesn't necessarily mean anything, right after this she lawyered up. A lot of people, including Julia's family, believe that she was murdered and that this was a huge cover-up. A lot of people feel this way because 3 of the 4 friends that were with Julia that night have family in law enforcement. Specifically Kristen, whose grandpa was a sheriff at the same police department that was investigating Julia's death. And it doesn't make it any better when, not long after her friend's death, Kristen goes on to make tweets like this. It's just not right to be rude to a family, especially publicly when they are experiencing such a major loss like this. Julia's family believes that she was run over by her own car with someone else driving, possibly multiple times with how badly she was injured. And one of the main reasons they feel that someone else was involved was the way Julia's clothes were found. They were pretty bloody, but it looked like someone maybe wiped their own bloody hands on them before hanging them over the railing. This is all very suspicious, and then you have reports of her friends reportedly telling other people in town incriminating details about that night, details that they never mentioned to police. It's just crazy to me that what happened to Julia and how gruesome it was happened within a 15-minute time frame, and the fact that we don't know what exactly happened between Julia and Kristen that caused her to be so upset. Some think it was because her friends were trying to keep her car keys from her in order to prevent her from driving drunk, and that's why she said, "Give me the keys." But it also doesn't make sense on how she was hit with her own car, like investigators say. You have police telling you that it was an accident on one hand, but on the other, there's so much evidence suggesting foul play was involved. Her mom has gone on to create this Facebook page in hopes of finding justice for her daughter, and she also has this GoFundMe to help continue funding her private investigation, as well as a petition to get Julia's case reopened. If you feel so inclined, you can show your support in these ways, or simply just sharing Julia's story with everyone you know. Someone definitely knows something, and her family deserves justice. But it's now been 14 years, and whatever happened to Julia at mile marker 181 remains a mystery.
He lied to the family, said he was a contractor so they would let him inside the house. Little did they know he was the missing daughter's kidnapper, and this entire time she has been underground at his house, chained up. It's a living nightmare. John Jamelski, for 15 years between 1988 and 2003, kidnapped girls and held them captive underground at his own house. John Jamelski was born and raised in Syracuse, New York. As a child, he was quiet, reserved, didn't have many hobbies, didn't have many friends. In his early school years, he was bullied, he was weird, a little odd. People were not really interested interested in being his friend, but he was also not interested in putting any effort in to make any friends, so it was kind of fine. He went to college, he graduated. In 1959, when he was 24 years old, he meets a school teacher named Dorothy Richmond. In September of that year, they get married. Later on, him and Dorothy do end up having 3 kids together, which is crazy to marry a monster. By the early 1980s, John is around his mid-40s. All of their kids have grown up and moved out, so they're now empty nesters. John's father passes away, leaving him with a lot of money and a lot of investment properties. So he was rich, but at the same time, he was very frugal with his money, to the point where they would dress in the same clothes all the time, aka they were always smelly and dirty. He was not only dirty, but he was also a hoarder. So his house, both inside and outside, were filled with stuff. The outside yard was a mess. People would complain, and instead of cleaning it up, John builds a 6-foot-tall fence around his property so that no one can see inside. In 1984, John is 49 years old. Dorothy, his wife, gets diagnosed with cancer, and she becomes so ill that she is bedridden. When Dorothy gets sick, all of a sudden John decides he wants to change his looks. He wants to dress younger to impress young girls. His mindset, I guess, is that because now his wife can't give him attention, he needs to go out and find it elsewhere. So what does John decide to do? John, in his little peanut-sized brain, decides to get a 16-year-old girlfriend. Yep, he gets a girlfriend when he's 49, and he decides to move in the 16-year-old girlfriend into his house where his sick wife lives. This is a really big issue in his family. It's actually tearing his family apart, and he does end up breaking things off with a girlfriend, but now he hates his family because he thinks the family made him end the relationship. So again, in his little pea-sized brain, he thinks, I'm going to keep dating girls, but next time I will do it and keep it a secret so no one can judge me. It's 1988 now. John is 53, and he gets the idea in his head that now it's time to start looking for his secret girlfriend. He is planning to kidnap a girl and bring her back to his mother's house. September 17th, he's driving around. He sees a 14-year-old girl walking home, starts to talk to her, lures her into his car, and drives her to his mom's house. When they arrive, he gives her chlorophyll, so she passes out. He undresses her and puts her in a shed and chains her up. Next thing the girl knows, she wakes up and she's chained, but the shed is underground, so she's screaming, but no one can hear her. Next time that John enters the shed to go talk to the girl, and by the way, I'm gonna call all the victims girls because they luckily were all able to escape or get out, but they don't want their identities out there, so I'm just referring to the victims as girls. John enters the shed, speaks to the girl, tells her that this is her new life, that she was there to serve him, to please him, and if she disobeyed him, he would kill her entire family. And that was that. That was her life for months. He would SA her every single day. Around 6 months into that routine, John decides that this is not working anymore. He wants something more practical for himself. John decides that right underneath his own yard, right outside his house, he was going to build an underground dungeon where he would keep his victims from now on. He hires a construction company. He says he needs help building a bomb shelter, and they dig up John's new dungeon. The dungeon is 10 feet deep. He built an entrance from the basement. It was like a tunnel, a 10-foot tunnel. You could crawl through that tunnel to the dungeon and access it through a metal door. The first thing he does when his new dungeon is complete is he goes to go pick up the 14-year-old girl that he has been keeping captive, brings her to the dungeon, and chains her up in there. He's keeping her in there, treating her like a prisoner, giving her only enough food and water to barely survive, still getting SA daily. She's undressed 90% of the time, chained up with a chain and a lock, just horrible. John ordered her, because he is a psychopath, to keep a daily diary writing down all the things he did to her and all the awful ways he treated her. For whatever reason, John wanted every detail of her daily routine. And we know that John threatened her family to kill her entire family if she was to escape. He also, which this is a pattern in his later victims, was able to get pictures from her house, both inside and outside, and pictures of her family, and he would use that to show the victims and prove to them that he had access to their houses and their families if he needed to harm them. The way that he was able to get pictures of her family and inside the house of this particular victim is he went, knocked on the door, pretended to be working for the landlord, and the family let him inside, obviously not having a clue that that person had kidnapped their daughter and was keeping her chained up like an animal. He was literally inside of her house interacting with her entire family, her parents. That is crazy. The second threat that he would tell his victims, specifically this was the first time he said it, was that he would say he was part of a really powerful cult made up of politicians, law enforcement, lawyers, rich people, and that was obviously false information, but she believed it. John has been keeping her captive for 2 years. She is 16 years old now, and throughout the years he just kept getting more delusional and more cocky in his head. Although he was treating her terribly, he really thought that she was his girlfriend and that they were in love. How she is finally able to escape, how she gets away from this real life nightmare, is that John, because he thought that he loved her, he took her on a trip to California. They went on the trip, and when they got back at the airport, he was like, okay, nice to meet you, you're done here, but if you ever tell anyone anything about me, I will kill your family, so you're free to go, but just don't tell anyone. He left her at the airport. She got in contact with her family, went home, and never told a soul. He kidnapped that victim when he was 53 years old. Now it's 1995. He's almost 60 years old. It's March in 1995 now. He's again driving around looking for his next victim when he sees a 14-year-old girl walking around, pulls his car up to her, and asks her for help to deliver a package. He tells her it's a secret package, and he's able to convince her that the package is at his house in the dungeon. He tells her if she can retrieve the package, then she would get paid, and that's what happened. She willingly went into the dungeon, which is when he chains her up with a lock and shuts the metal door behind her. When he talked to her again, he told her about the powerful cult that he was part of and about how he would kill her whole family if she was to disobey him. And he was again able to take pictures of her house and of the family to prove that he could harm them should he want to. She was starved, essayed on the daily, forced to write down her daily routines and keep track of all the abuse, the whole thing, and she would remain there for 1 year and 1 month. And then one day, John puts a blindfold on her, gets her in his car, drives to her mom's house, and drops her off. And that girl, that victim, she told her mother everything. However, because John knew where she lived, he would go and sit outside of the house and watch the house creepily, which terrified one, the girl, but two, her mother. So they never went to the police. In August of 1997, John kidnaps his third victim. He was driving around again. He saw a 53-year-old woman walking. He jumped out of the car, forced her into the car, and drove away. He takes her to the dungeon, and the pattern repeats. She's treated horribly, given no food, essayed on the daily, informed about the cult, threats to her family are made. Again, as is his pattern, in May 23rd of 1998, after almost a year, he just let her go, and this lady went directly to the police. But the police did not believe her, so nothing came from that. In 1998, John's wife, Dorothy, passes away. By May of 2001, he has decided he needs to take another victim. By the way, by this point, John is 66 years old. He's literally a grandpa. When is this gonna stop? I'm tired of it, grandpa. He's driving around. He sees a 26-year-old mother. He offers her a ride. She probably saw an old, ugly grandpa, thought that he was harmless, and she accepted the ride. And she does not remember anything until she wakes up in the dungeon. And again, the story repeats. John talks to her as he's yapping all about his fake cult, threatening her family, essaying her daily. And this girl fought back. She was a mother. All she had in mind was to get back to her kids. So she fought back every single day so hard, and he didn't like that. So he only kept her for 2 months, then let her go. She immediately went to the police. They did a little bit of an investigation, searched for a little bit, but they didn't find her, thought the story was too crazy to be real, so they just let it go. We're now in October 2002. John is 67 years old, and this is when he picks up his last victim. He's driving around. He sees a 16-year-old girl, forces her to the dungeon, and does to her everything he has done to every single other victim. This girl, however, could tell that John, in his stupid little peanut-sized brain, thought that this was the start of a new romantic relationship, and she decided the tactic that she would take was to play along with it, to be friendly, act like she was interested in spending time with him. That worked. It resulted in John getting way too confident to the point where he started taking her out in public. One day. One day they go to the store. The girl manages to get a hold of a phone. She quickly dials her sister. Her sister luckily picks up the phone, and she tells her everything that's going on, quickly hangs up. The sister calls the store back. An employee answers, and she confirms that there is a young girl there with an old man. The employee then calls the police. The police are thankfully able to track down John and the girl, and as soon as they got there, the girl ran up to the cops and said, help me, I've been kidnapped. John is shocked because he's an idiot, and of course he gets arrested. So they question this girl, and the cops finally connect the dots and think, oh, we have heard this story before. He must have been doing this to multiple girls. They go to John's house, they find the dungeon, confirming that everything the girls have been saying has been true, and this is now all over the media. 5 girls taken over the span of 15 years. Pictures and videos of the dungeon are now all over the news, and the victims that had not come forward do. John, on the other hand, says that he is a nice guy, and his explanation to why he did what he did is because he couldn't do the deed with his wife because she was sick, so he needed to find attention and other ways to get the deed done somehow, some way. He also, for whatever reason, somehow, some way, didn't think that what he did was that bad. He was shocked when he was charged for kidnapping because he didn't think that he did that. He said that the punishment that he was expecting to have was to maybe pay a fine, do community service, and maybe a little bit of law. He was charged with 5 counts of kidnapping, and he accepted a plea deal of 18 years to life in prison. Part of his guilty plea agreement was that his assets would be sold off and divided among his victims. The last update I could find was in October of 2023. He was denied parole. He should be now almost 90 years old, and I'm pretty positive he's still serving time. Okay, I gotta go. I was filming this in a rush. Love you all so much. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you. Let's talk in the comments, okay? Love you, bye.
However, coined the phrase, "You can't make this stuff up," might have known the story of real-life boogeyman, Albert Fish. A slight, elderly man with grey hair, no one suspected the kindly single father of being sadistic child murderer and cannibal.
Do y'all want to hear a creepy-ass crime case before I go to bed? Listen close. As usual, if you have anxiety, don't watch the video. Okay, so we're in the year 2006. Kathy Augustine is a politician in Nevada, the state's first female controller. But as quickly as her career is headed to the stars, it quickly starts going downhill. When in 2004, her political enemies accused her of violating election laws. Her case then went before the state legislature. The trial did not go in her favor, and she was impeached. Kathy has been lied on and betrayed, and she's eager to clear her name of the lies that have been put upon her. And she was going to clear her name, one way or another. 2 years later, after Kathy's impeachment, she ran again for state treasurer. But here's where things get funky. In the middle of her campaign, she fell ill. July 8th, 2006. Kathy Augustine's husband, Chaz Higgs, finds his wife, Kathy, unresponsive in their bedroom. An ambulance is immediately called by Chaz. Kathy is barely alive and rushed to the hospital. At first glance, doctors suspect a heart attack, but then they perform an angiogram. This is a type of x-ray to see if her heart had any blockages consisting with a heart attack. They found none. Doctors are trying every effort they can to keep Kathy alive, but her condition just keeps spiraling downhill. It's getting worse and worse, and they can do nothing to stop it. They're confused as to what has caused this. According to all of the friends and family of Kathy Augustine, who had seen her a few days prior, they said she was her normal, happy, bubbly self, with a big smile on her face. Kathy Augustine's brother actually said that a couple days before her sudden collapse, she was so happy and content with where her life was at the moment. For the next few days, Kathy is in critical condition. Then on July 11th, 2006, Kathy's family made the difficult decision to take her off life support, which this is supposedly what Kathy would have wanted. In her will, she stated that if anything bad had happened to her, and God forbid, if it was God's time to take her, then she didn't want to interrupt that. She wanted to go if it was her time. But I'm sure she didn't expect to drop dead out of nowhere. After Kathy's death, Kathy's husband, Chaz Higgs, comes forward with some important information. He says that in the early morning hours of July 8th, 2006, he got up while Kathy laid in bed and he did some chores around the house. When he was finished with these chores, he went back to the bedroom where she was lying in bed, and he noticed that she wasn't breathing. Him being a nurse, he immediately started CPR. Yes, he's a nurse. Medical examiners couldn't say a cause of death. They literally could not tell you how she died because she had no reason to. Next, they check her brain. Could she have died of an aneurysm? No, she did not. What happened to this beautiful, happily married woman? Not everything is as it seems. Listen to this. 3 days later, after Kathy Augustine has passed away, paramedics are called to her home once again. But why? When paramedics get there, they find Kathy's husband in a pool of blood. His wrists have been slit. He has attempted suicide. Paramedics roll Chaz Higgs away on a stretcher to the hospital, and he survives his injuries. He had left behind a suicide note, saying he could no longer live without his wife, and that he blames Kathy's political enemies for her death. What was strange was that in the suicide letter, he blamed her political enemies for her death.
kind of hinting towards a murder. But no one spoke of a murder. She didn't have a cause of death. No one thought that one of her fellow politicians had took her life. A murder wasn't even on the table. Why would he mention it? This shit just keeps getting weirder and weirder. Go to part 2. This is part 2 about Kathy Augustine. Kathy Augustine's husband, Chaz Higgs, has just attempted suicide after her unexplained death. He writes in a suicide note that he left behind that he blamed her political enemies for her death. Like I said in part 1, a murder wasn't on the table, but that's what he's hinting towards. Doctors at first thought she had a heart attack. Why is he speaking of a murder? The next day, after Chaz's attempted suicide, was Kathy Augustine's funeral. So many people saddened by the loss of her. But the biggest thing reigning over this funeral was questions. Why has she died? Still no one knew. Kathy and Chaz had only been married 3 years, this being Kathy's 4th marriage. Her previous husband, the one right before Chaz, Charles Augustine. If you're confused by the names, she was married to Chaz Higgs most recently, so you would think that her last name would be Higgs, but she kept her previous husband's last name, Augustine. I do not know why. Irrelevant to the case. Her previous husband, Charles, had suffered a stroke and ended up in the hospital. Charles Augustine had a few nurses caring for him, one of them being Chaz Higgs. This is where the story's about to have you asking so many questions. So we've done went a little bit in the past, 3 years earlier. Kathy is married to Charles Augustine. She goes up there frequently to visit her husband who is in a coma. The nurse that is taking care of him is Chaz Higgs. This is how Kathy and Chaz met. Charles actually ends up dying in the hospital. 3 weeks later, Kathy marries Chaz Higgs. Kathy's family members, as you can guess, are taken aback by this. They didn't jump down her throat about it. Of course, they wished her well, but they were definitely surprised that within 3 weeks she was married to somebody else. Because of this, investigators started to wonder, was Charles Augustine's death a result of foul play? But their main focus right now is the most recent death, Kathy Augustine. Now, as the investigation furthers, a medical examiner comes forward and says that she saw something suspicious during Kathy's autopsy. There were 2 bruises on Kathy's left butt cheek, and also 1 puncture wound, if not 2, on her butt as well. Tom Barb, the chief deputy district attorney, said that Chaz told news reporters that him and Kathy's 3-year marriage was a happy one, but people who worked with Chaz in the hospital said otherwise. Apparently, Chaz would say some pretty nasty things about his wife. One day, one of Chaz's co-workers said to him, "Hey, do you need any help?" And he said, "Yeah, get rid of my wife." Investigators look through Chaz's computer and find that he was having an affair with a mystery woman. He was telling this woman things like, "Kathy made my life a living hell, she's controlling." From the emails and messages, it sounds like he hates this woman. He hates Kathy. And during the 911 call, he seemed very calm. I'm gonna play it here for you.
Something's wrong with my wife. She's not breathing. I don't know what happened to her. It's not trauma or anything. Said she's been really stressed, over the last 6 months or so. Hey, I'm going to do some more CPR, okay? Yeah, go right ahead.
You just found your wife without a pulse. She's dead. I don't have much to say about this other than, you don't sound too concerned. Oh, she's been stressed, She's dead. Like, what are you talking about? One of the paramedics that was in the back of the ambulance when Kathy was being rushed to the hospital recalled Chaz sitting in the back of the ambulance reading the newspaper while his dead wife was on a gurney. If you're confused as to why I'm saying she's dead when she lasted 3 days alive in the hospital, is because when they arrived, she was dead on the scene. They revived her. She hadn't been dead long. She was on life support. Her body wasn't working on its own. She was dead. A friend of Kathy's then comes forward and says that the night before Kathy was found dead, she told her on the phone that her and Chaz's relationship was over. Everything's coming out now. A co-worker comes forward after this to investigators and says that in the same week that Kathy was found dead, Chaz went up to a random co-worker of his and said, "Hey, if you really want to kill somebody, give them a shot of succinylcholine." Succinylcholine is a drug used to paralyze people. It's a paralytic drug. He also told this co-worker that they can't trace it. When someone gets a shot of succinylcholine, the body gets rid of it within about a minute and a half. It's definitely a drug that Chaz would have access to, being he was a nurse. People are starting to suspect that Chaz has something to do with his wife's death. Investigators go to the hospital that Kathy was administered to. They actually froze some of her urine when she first got there. Succinylcholine leaves the body really fastly, but it survives longer in urine. At this exact time in 2006, there were only 2 labs in all of the United States that would test for succinylcholine. One of these labs was in Virginia. They, of course, sent her urine for testing. And what do you know? Kathy Augustine's urine had traces of succinylcholine. She had been poisoned. Chaz is immediately arrested, and they end up digging up Kathy's ex-husband, Charles Augustine, and he actually had small trace amounts of succinylcholine as well. He poisoned Charles, took his wife, and then poisoned her too. Ain't that about a bitch? Well.